much indeed, and thanks everyone for coming along. And during the conversation, if anybody has any questions, there's no difficulty, it's kind of fairly informal. And so I just wanted to start by congratulating Frances on the show. I think it's just terrific and very, very enjoyable looking at the various different works. And I have to say, I never really expected to be so intrigued by a painting of an underground car park. But I am. So anyway, the first question that I just wanted to ask from Frances was just to open up to tell us about how you started painting, when you were first interested in art and making pictures.
Yeah, I started when I was very young. My dad was an illustrator and artist, and he showed me and my brothers and sister different drawing and painting techniques, kind of with watercolors and pencil and stuff. So yeah, no, I was very encouraging when I was younger, and then I kept it up in my teens, and in college I went to study architecture in university. There was a few friends that did some oil painting, so kind of on weekends we'd meet up to do, and they showed me kind of basic oil painting techniques, and then in the final year of college, in the summer before that, I did a week-long course in the NCAD that was a life painting class that showed you different oil painting techniques as well. So that was kind of the different, picked up bits and pieces over the years from different people, and then when I finished university, I decided to take a year out to paint, and if nothing else, I'd kind of get better at painting.
So you'd consider yourself self-taught in a sense?
Yeah, well, yeah,
People show you the various different techniques over time and absorb those. And So some of it was kind of trial and error to see what was working.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd used watercolors in my teens.
Yeah.
But I probably wasn't using the correct watercolor technique, really, And when I started using oils, I really liked the pace of them. It gave me enough time to keep working on an area and keep changing it until I got close to what I wanted it to be.
Yeah. And were you tempted to go and study painting at, say, College of Art or something? You went into architecture.
It would have been. I was maybe a bit torn between studying art or architecture when I was making that. When I was deciding about university. But I did like architecture, and I still really enjoy architecture and some designing but I might at some point in the future go on to do a master's or something in the NCAD to kind of try to dig into that a bit more as well.
Right, okay. I mean, there seems to be quite a strong architectural element in your artwork. Yeah. So nothing's ever wasted. So all of that exposure to structure seems to have come through in your work.
Yeah, no, for sure. It definitely gave me a bigger appreciation of the kind of built environment and kind of what things are designed and what are not designed so much in the city. As well, through studying architecture, I was like my thesis year, I was focused on light and the kind of dynamics of light and how that affects how you read a space or how important it is in design. But it was really nice to dig into that, to really explore the kind of dynamics of light, and different qualities of light and stuff, and that has followed through in my interests.
It's fascinating because it seems almost like a contradiction in terms that somebody interested in light would do paintings that almost, the majority seem to be night.
Yeah.
But actually there's a logic, isn't there?
No, there is. They are pretty dark, for somebody that's very interested in light. But at night, there's a lot going on with light. There's multiple sources. There's lots of different types, different dynamics and qualities of light at night. Kind of more so than you'd get sometimes in the day. So there's different colours. There's more concentrated areas, and there's more reflections going on, and there's a lot of kind of different qualities of light and dynamics of light that are happening at night, you know.
And of course at night, the light you get is largely man-made light, whereas in the daytime it's sort of natural, or what we might call natural light. And that's an important distinction for you, I think, isn't it? That you're interested in what light tells you about spaces.
Yeah. No, it can. You can kind of see kind of different layers of thinking behind, like the design of spaces and kind of lighting layouts and kind of density of occupation or not, and well, yeah, and just really kind of the light can make a place a little more intimidating or not as well. It can really affect the atmosphere of a place, and it seems like it's radically different than during the daytime, and it seems kind of a bit random, you know, or a little bit. It'll be unexpected, kind of what. It's hard to predict kind of what a place will be like, the atmosphere of it, which comes a lot from the lighting at night compared to the daytime.
And you can kind of read quite a bit from the way a place is lit. So like the way a motorway is lit, for example, or a busy urban centre would be more lit than, say, a housing estate somewhere on, far from the edges of town, for example. Would that be correct?
Yeah, no, it is kind of interesting seeing the variety of lighting and kind of the kind of density of light in the different areas, and the different sources as well, whether it's coming from a shop front, whether it's from a street light or car headlamp, and there's a lot of different places it can be coming from.
I find that it's very intriguing actually in the artworks that the light sources are so varied, whether it's an overhead light or light coming from somebody's window or from car headlights or whatever. There's all of those different kind of elements, and the colour of light. I mean, one of the things I find intriguing is that your work conjures up in the imagination that it's kind of black, white and grey, but in fact there's a lot of colour going on there. But subtle.
Yeah. No, I really like. There's a lot of different kind of temperatures, and even in the streetlights, kind of slightly different. And because I'm using the camera, photographing the areas, there's kind of limitations in the white balance of the camera. So it sometimes exaggerates the difference in certain colour temperatures of light as well, which I like. It kind of it's translating it from the real space into what the camera can see, and sometimes those changes I quite like a lot of the time. If there's orange streetlights there, it'll whatever way the kind of white balance is automatically picked up on the camera, it will turn a green traffic light kind of bluish, so it kind of changes it changes things a little bit.
Different lenses, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, another thing that intrigues me about these images is that they are mostly of urban kind of environments. There's buildings and roads and physical structures, but never any humans present.
Yeah.
Is that an attraction of nighttime, that you can see the city?
Yeah, no, it is one of the things that I like about the night. The kind of that places that can be really busy and loud in the daytime can be quite quiet and peaceful at night, and kind of I find my attention drawn a little more to the environment when it is when there are less people, and it's a different atmosphere as well when there's less people there, and it kind of it makes you look at the place a little bit more and think about the act of looking, rather than if there was people in the images, it might become a bit more narrative in a way. So I kind of like kind of removing the activity so much.
Yeah, it's interesting actually that when people are put into the image, it becomes about them, and the city or the environment becomes the backdrop to their, as you say, their narrative.
Yeah.
But when they're taken out of it, it's what you can read then from the actual
Yeah, yeah.
buildings. Would that be?
Yeah, no, that's, yeah.
And you talked about taking photographs. Do you do that at night time? And would you go out at night with your camera? Or
Yeah, like, a lot of the time it might be on my way home from a night out or something like that. If I see places I like, I'll start photographing, and I might go back to them on other nights if I think there's something there that I didn't quite get, or I might go back in different weather conditions even as well. Like after rain, the reflective surfaces change the light dynamics and quality of the place as well. Yeah, and sometimes I will kind of purposely go out on the night for an hour or two photographing and looking for looking for kind of different compositions, different things to play with.
the compositional element is really fascinating, because sometimes the work reads almost like abstract arrangements of form and colour and shape and depth and so on, and yet it's at the same time as being almost like an abstract arrangement, it also has this kind of sense of something very familiar. So you've got this kind of conflict going on in yourself, you as the viewer, looking at the works, which is really, really intriguing. You know, you can go from one to the other. The places all have a kind of sense of something familiar, even if we've never been to a specific place, we've been to places like this. So do you tend to look at environments that you are familiar with?
Well, yeah, no, a lot of them will be kind of, I tend to photograph a lot close to where I live, so,
right, yeah.
And I'm very familiar with those places. I go by them all the time, and I'm able to explore them a little bit more, or find things in them that I might not have seen if I just happened to be passing through the place. So last year I moved to Kilmainham, so there's maybe there's 6 paintings in the show here that are close to there, you know. And yeah, no, it is kind of going by the same place all the time allows me to photograph it over and over again, and if I don't get something the first couple of times, I might get something at a later time, you know. It makes it easier to kind of experiment a little bit with photographing the place as well.
Yeah. And with some of the works in this exhibition, you might have several views of the same place.
Yeah, no, I wanted to.
That's a kind of new departure, is it?
It is a little bit, yeah. At the exhibition I had 2 years ago, there were 2 paintings that were of a similar place but a slightly different point of view on it, and I wanted to explore that a little bit more. So there's these 2 paintings here are of the same corner, and it just happened the 2 of them together, kind of. It kind of builds a little bit of a different picture of the place, and it kind of introduces some movement between the 2 paintings, you know, or an increment of time kind of between the 2, you know. And just like one of them, this one here is looking straight on at it, kind of a single point perspective.
Yes, and you can move into that
you
space.
can go straight in,
and
all the vertical lines are parallel to the edge of the painting, and then this one over here is tilted, looking up a little bit, so the lines are kind of sprayed a little bit differently. So it's kind of maybe minor to some people, but to me it's a bit of a departure, you know, and just represents the place a little bit differently, you know.
And how you encounter these. Well, one encounters different places that as you approach it and as you move into the space and so on. I'm interested in coming back to that whole aspect of perspective and our relationship with the fictive places in the image, and fictive in the sense that it's painted in, I suppose, in real space. But I'm interested in, I think the people are intrigued by the kind of realism in the paintings, or a kind of sense of realism in the paintings, but a certain amount of editing might go on. Would that be?
No, there is some editing, like I will kind of, like it's hard sometimes to get a completely empty street, so I will sometimes remove a car or 2 from the photograph, or this one here was probably a combination of 2 or 3 photographs to get all the elements that I wanted in it. And I will sometimes kind of correct perspective distortion in it if I want all the vertical lines to be parallel to the edge, to give a bit more of that abstract kind of graphic compositional quality you were talking about earlier. And then kind of sometimes simplifying certain areas of texture or something like that. There will be some conscious changes, departures from the photograph as well.
Because you're making a painting.
Yeah.
I think this is very interesting because one could make the error of believing that the images are just simply transcribed from a photograph, but they're not. There's a huge amount of work goes on in choosing the subject of the photograph, seeing the scene from different angles, making all of those decisions about what you'll include, what you'll leave out, and then working with the different textures. I mean, there's a lot of decisions that get made.
There is, there is a good few. It was something that I had struggled a good while with, how different to make them from the photographs, you know, or the question about why not just show a photograph or something like that. But over the years, I'm more comfortable with the decisions, even though they might be not big decisions to other people, but and it does seem quite different from the photograph in the end. The end result feels very different to me in the end.
Well, this is why I suppose an image of the underground car park can be so compelling when you see it in a painting. But then if you're actually in the space, you kind of want to get by it, get to wherever you're going, you know. It's this kind of transitionary kind of space which is so interesting. And one of the things that struck me about the underground car park was the absolute absence of any element of nature in it. But yet in some of the outdoor scenes you might see wild plants growing up or a tree or something. So that balance between...
I suppose they're different kind of, slightly different urban environments, you know. Sometimes like the underground car park is at one end of the urban environment where you're just surrounded by concrete and kind of extract fans and things like that, which I do like, and probably the study of architecture gave me a different appreciation of as well. And an underground car park has different kind of, maybe like a film set quality to it as well. There's different different things you can read into an underground car park as an image, as opposed to maybe being there, you know, to live
yes, it's this whole cinematic kind of that element. And I mean, this is, I suppose, what makes the work so kind of...
They don't like what we're saying.
What's so intriguing in some of those ways, what makes it, I suppose, kind of postmodern and contemporary, is that we bring so much of our own memories of such places, or we've seen them cinematically or been in them or whatever, into that image. It's not just, you know, here's the image and here's what you've got to think about it. We engage with it. There is that kind of dialogue maybe that goes on with some of the paintings.
And I always really like hearing what other people kind of bring to them, you know, because it's a lot of the times they can feel like fairly neutral places, but people will bring their own memories and experiences of different parts of the city to them.
One of the things I find really intriguing as well about how, you know, sometimes we'll see plants, kind of weeds, people call them, kind of sprouting up, but there doesn't seem, you don't seem to kind of fall into that popular trap of the weed being something about nature reasserting itself in the urban environment. It's there because it's there.
Yes.
This is what happens.
And they're not something that I would remove from the photograph. They're just kind of a little bit part of it, and like you were saying before about being able to read certain things into image of the urban environment, like whether it's to do with whether it's inhabited or worn down or weathered or looked after or not. A weed could kind of signify a little bit of maybe neglect of something.
Yeah,
You know.
so it's more about that. I mean, some of the places are neglected as we walk through the city, and I thought that this was intriguing how you didn't shy away from showing that, you know, so if the road markings were a bit chipped or, you know, the cracks in the pavement, they are there.
They're there, and I'm probably really drawn to
Yeah.
that, the signs of weathering, the signs of use and stuff. That is something I'm drawn to. I'm not sure why, but it is something that appeals to me.
Yeah, I think it is a very compelling kind of element because, you know, we do experience places being around for a long time, long before we arrived, and they'll continue after we're gone. So you do get kind of sense of the passing through time that, you know, they exist in that kind of way, which kind of makes them, and not kind of try to improve them or tidy them up in any way. That's how we encounter the city, really.
Yeah. No, it is. That's an interesting way of articulating it. Yeah, no, it's good.
And the perspective element then, I think is really interesting that you've made some new approaches to that.
Yeah, I was always drawn to like there again, where of kind of composing the image by setting up kind of a single point perspective and with the camera looking parallel to a wall, and it kind of makes some kind of slightly kind of geometric abstract shapes in the composition, and that's kind of my natural inclination, and I do like it. But a couple of years ago I tried to push myself a little bit away from that, and I was out photographing one night, and I was standing in a spot in front of some traffic lights, setting up the way I'd normally set up a shot, and then I decided to kind of step back from there and to the side and kind of get a little bit elevated and look down at where I had been standing and the view I was looking at. So it kind of got this slightly higher view, looking at my old self, setting up a photograph, and I quite like this composition, and it was different to the way I'd been composing before. The vertical lines were no longer parallel to the edge; they were splayed out because you're looking down. The vertical lines start to lean to the side, you know, and it gives a little bit a perspective distortion, which I liked then. You know? So in a fair few of these, I've purposely kind of set up like this one here. You can see the vertical lines kind of leaning to one side there and leaning to the other side here, and it's the transition between the two is very clear here because of the stripes on the lines, where they're all parallel lines in reality, but here they're leaning one side and then slowly leaning to the other side. And so that was something that I wanted to consciously kind of explore a bit, because it represents the space in a different way, you know. And it focuses a bit more on the ground, and it gave me a little bit. It is a bit more challenging to paint it as well.
I can imagine,
And that was good to do that, you know. But in a fair few of the paintings here, I've consciously done that. And another thing with a lot of the paintings as well, when I started looking down, it did cut off the light source as well a lot of the times. So in most of the paintings here, I've kind of cut off the source of the light and just looked at the effects of it, looking at the illumination of it. And that was something there's the filmmaker Robert Bresson in his book on cinematography, he speaks about being more intrigued by the effects, by showing the effects rather than the causes of something, you know. And it's kind of a little bit more of an indirect, kind of more poetic way to show and describe an event, you know. So it's done really well in this film. A gentle woman, the first few shots of that, they really visually and through sound, he does that really well, kind of showing the effects of an event. So you're kind of chasing after this event that's happening, and you're actually seeing it, you know.
Yeah.
So I was thinking a little bit about kind of seeing the effects rather than the cause when I was excluding the light source from most of the images here.
That's interesting. So cinematography and the methods that are used in filmmaking would be something that you'd be exploring among them.
That was definitely on my mind a little bit. It's very different when it's kind of an unfolding event in film as opposed to a static image. And it's like kind of cutting off the light source like that kind of makes you fill in gaps of the space outside of the image as well a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, that's really interesting what you're saying about Bessel's work. And are there any other writers or theorists?
Well, a little bit of the. I was reading Hugh Campbell, the head of the School of Architecture at UCD. He had a book on photography and the city called Space Framed, and he described a lot of different ways of that different photographers approached the city, and whether it's that kind of very formal kind of single point perspective view, or he described it more kind of a snapshot view, kind of something very informal.
Yeah.
So that was probably in part helped kind of nudge me towards kind of changing or giving that slightly downward view on things, you know. But yeah, that was one that.
Because it's been interesting to see your shows over the years, how they seem to come from a single, well, not a single concept, but they're consistent, shall we say. But yet there are changes each time, and you bring new challenges to yourself to look at the space in new kinds of ways.
No, I would like. I try to sometimes consciously push myself to change a little bit, but I do kind of like the idea of kind of a natural evolution happening as well, you know. So I don't like to try to be too controlling over the way that I go, you know.
Yeah, things occur to you as they unfold, I suppose. And, I noticed there's a wonderful model downstairs, and I know Writer Studio visit with you a couple of years back, and you just made a model, I think, at that time.
That's
interiors. And
that was another kind of departure a couple of years ago, where I did like painting interiors, and but it was hard to get inside places at night to photograph them. So I thought I'll make a model and see if I can get images from that would work well. And then as I was making models, it was kind of interesting in a few different ways. Then, you know, I had control over the types of light, or where the light is in it, and the textures of the surfaces, and the dimensions of the space as well. So I kind of had come up with a few different ideas of the types of spaces I wanted to try to make for interiors. And four of the paintings downstairs are of interiors, and they're kind of, I liked that they're fictional spaces as well, you know. So they're kind of fairly realistic representational paintings of these fictional spaces, as well as the images of real spaces that are here, you know. I kind of liked the two of those being together. You know?
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea, that they're fictional, but yet the method of representation is realistic. I was talking to somebody earlier, we were looking closely at your paintings, and I mean the exquisitely tiny detail that occurs in some of the images is just unbelievable. I mean, we can imagine sort of Van Eyck, you know, he brushes about 4 hairs in them, you know, and yet there's a kind of, they don't look contrived, they don't look as if, they look almost effortless, but I'm sure they're not.
There's a fair bit of time about it. But I kind of, it's kind of probably my natural inclination to kind of go into the detail like that. But I wouldn't want them to be too overtly kind of showing off or something like that, you know. But I do like getting into those little details, because it's kind of, when I'm painting it, it's just like areas of a certain colour that I'm painting, a shape of a certain colour, you know. So it's kind of trying to get that close to what I'm working from.
They look so naturalistic, you know. They look so convincing and so on. And it's only after you think, how did you do that? You know, it must be time consuming. I mean,
it is, This one was probably about maybe 7 weeks work, and I'm happy in a day if I have maybe 6 hours of actual putting paint on board, you know. So so there is a fair bit of time.
I mean, and even the areas that looked as dark, I mean, the kind of texture and colour that goes into those to get it to look naturalistic and light. Probably actually more difficult in some respects.
It can be in some of them, especially if there's a very slight bit of colour, like in this one, there's a tiny kind of bit of orangey red that goes into black here. So that transition can be a little tricky to get smooth.
It's not just black, it's it's much more.
There's very slight things. And that was probably something I liked in this image as well. It's quite a dull orangey light, but there's lots of kind of subtle shifts in
There's a lot of it. I was intrigued as well what you were saying. I think many of us are, about the reflective surfaces, because there's one of the paintings downstairs that shows kind of a bow-shaped doorway that looks as if it's of some kind of reflective metal, and what we would read in one sense as being a very solid closed entryway then reflects back. I mean, you know, which I think is a really interesting contrast that goes on at the same time.
No, I did. I liked that it was reflecting the street that we were in. So we were seeing the image is set up kind of similar to the other ones where it's a single point perspective. Like looking through the windows, the doorways, the glass, you can see some of the single point perspective, but this curved cylindrical mirror there was reflecting the street and giving like a single axis curvilinear perspective of the street, you know. So it was representing the street in this other type of perspective, you know. So
but to do it on a curve, you know.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely intriguing. And then in the windows on either side, you kind of get a sense of being able to see both through the space and also the reflection back as one experiences it.
Yeah, no, there was a lot.
Balances,
There was lots going on in that one that were nice to kind of step into.
I've loads more questions, but I'm going to stop hogging this conversation and open it up, because I'm sure everybody here has got